Russian servicemen who previously served in rear units and on the border have begun to be sent to assault units because of North Korean soldiers who are now taking their places in the rear. This was reported by the I Want to Live project of the Coordination Headquarters for the Treatment of Prisoners of War. According to the resource, the wife of Sapper Danial Ilyasov from the 89th Sapper Regiment, Military Unit 75406, recorded a video message. She said that her husband and his comrades were replaced by North Koreans, while the Russians themselves were sent to assault units on the front lines, where they likely died. The woman noted that her husband was forcibly assigned to serve as a grenade launcher operator in the 163rd Tank Regiment of Military Unit 84839. During one of the assaults, he was seriously wounded, losing fingers. When the soldiers attempted to retreat for medical attention, the commander threatened to zero them and force them to continue the assault. According to her, Danial Ilyasov did not return after this battle and is now considered missing in action. His wife appealed to the Russian military leadership to intervene, but received no response. The I Want to Live project reports that Ilyasov's case is not isolated. The editorial office has received complaints from other relatives of soldiers who were unexpectedly transferred from the rear to the front. These relatives note that North Korean soldiers are effectively taking their places in their units, while the Russians themselves are being sent to the most dangerous parts of the front to be killed. Media previously reported that North Korea continues to supply weapons to Russia. Furthermore, Pyongyang is preparing to send additional troops to Russia to participate in the war against Ukraine. The deployment of North Korean troops may have already occurred before the end of the summer, as Moscow was planning to intensify its offensive. South Korea's National Intelligence Service recently announced its findings regarding North Korea's involvement in Russia's aggression against Ukraine. He attended a closed briefing by the NIS. Seoul is convinced that Pyongyang is now preparing to deploy additional troops to Russia that will participate in the war against Ukraine. Additional deployments could occur as early as July or August. Lee stressed. He clarified that during the briefing, NIS representatives explained that they drew their conclusions based on processes observed in the North Korean army, as well as the recent visit to Pyongyang of a high-ranking representative of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. These intentions may also indicate Moscow's plans to intensify its attacks and launch a large-scale offensive before the end of the summer. Lee Sung-kwen believes. At the same time, South Korean intelligence stated that North Korea continues to supply Russia with artillery ammunition and missiles. Moscow pays for these supplies with technical consultations on satellite launches and missile guidance systems. Reuters recalls that after information about the first deployment of North Korean troops on Russian territory and their participation in fighting in the Kursk region appeared in the public domain, Pyongyang and Moscow acknowledged this fact after months of denial. Both countries said the cooperation is based on a treaty signed by their leaders last June, which includes a mutual defense pact. The publication adds, all eyes are on the battles raging around the fortress city of Pokrovsk in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast, but on a less populated sector of the front line just a few miles south of Pokrovsk, the Russians are steadily advancing. If the Ukrainians can't halt the advance, the city of Zaporizhia and its 700,000 inhabitants could eventually come under siege, says Euromaidan Press media outlet. Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka, 45 kilometers to the east, are the twin locuses of the fighting as Russia's wider war on Ukraine grinds through its 43rd month. Capturing one or both cities would give the Russians a clear shot at the main urban conglomeration in western Donetsk, the twin cities of Kramatorsk and Slovyansk. Both the Ukrainian and Russian command understand the importance of Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka, their respective strategies. This year, both cities managed to attract and concentrate significant Russian forces. French analyst Clément Mollin commented, but the gathering Russians provoked a major reaction from the Ukrainian command, which redeployed its offensive forces from Kursk and several brigades from other fronts. Mollin explained, the concentration of troops from both sides around Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka has left the line of contact in southern Donetsk comparatively thinly manned. But here, as elsewhere along the 1,100-kilometer front line, the Russians have a manpower advantage and a major tank advantage too, although the tanks haven't yet played a major role in the fighting. Euromaidan Press says, with more troops and equipment, the Russians have been able to slowly but steadily push back the Ukrainians along the 75-kilometer stretch of the front between Pokrovsk and the similarly named Pokrovske. Since capturing the town of Kharkiv in January, the Russians have marched 75 kilometers west in South Donetsk and are now just 15 kilometers from one of the main natural defenses in the area, the Bucha River, and just 35 kilometers from Pokrovske. The situation in the area is not catastrophic because no big city is threatened, Mollin noted. After all, there is no city at all in the area, just forests and fields and small villages. Most of what the Russians have captured in South Donetsk this year is countryside. But greater risk looms for the Ukrainians. The Russians are slowly taking the highly fortified southern front, Mollin warned. Anticipating further Russian advances, Ukraine has begun digging major earthworks west of Pokrovsk. Euromaidan Press says, it's possible in the coming months a new axis will materialize, according to Mollin, one that could bring the Russians close enough to threaten Zaporizhia city. The recent redeployment of the 90th Tank Division could prove pivotal. The 25,000-person division, the biggest in the Russian army, had been fighting along the northern part of the southern Donetsk front, while lighter units fought further south. When those lighter units got bogged down in Ukrainian defenses on the east side of the Bucha River, the Russian command moved the 90th Tank Division south to add mass to the main Russian effort in South Donetsk. The Ukrainian army's battle-hardened but exhausted 72nd Mechanized Brigade had been complicating the Russian division's march, but the Ukrainian unit recently rotated off the front line, leaving less experienced brigades to face off against the 90th Tank Division. Euromaidan Press reports. Mollin, for one, wrote that he fully expects the Russians to push to Pokrovsk. If and when they advance past that town, we'll find out how effective the new fortifications west of Pokrovsk are.